right. All right, well, good morning, everybody. It is 9 o'clock, so we will go ahead and start. I call this meeting of the State Board of Pharmacy to order. As is the tradition from our predecessors, I will read the mission statement. Our mission statement is the Texas State Board of Pharmacy, as a leader in protecting the public health of the citizens of Texas, shall up innovative, multidisciplinary, and collaborative practices and education which produce quality care and positive patient outcomes. Just kind of some reminders, if everybody can, put your phones on silent. We want to make sure that we are having an effective meeting. On the pillar for those that are looking for CE, so make sure before you leave you utilize the QR code to register for that. And with that, I will ask Tim to take the roll.
President Julie Spear.
Here.
Vice President Lori Hinkey.
Here.
Treasurer Rick Fernandez.
Here.
Board members Jenny Yoakum.
Here.
Bradley Miller.
Here.
Ian Shaw.
Here.
Rick Tisch.
Here.
Daniel Guerrero.
Here.
Donnie Lewis.
Here.
Suzette Tiarina.
Here.
Donna Montemore. Madam President, all are here except Donna, and we know where she is. She's excused.
All right, well, thank you. All right, with that, we will start with our public comments. We've got a number of people that have registered. We're going to give everyone, speeding along. We need to go ahead and, board members, I know that you have already read these and reviewed them, but we do need to approve our business meeting minutes from our February 1st meeting. Can I get a second from Rick? All those in favor? Any opposed? You're going to abstain. All right, we're going to show that Daniel has abstained. But with that, the minutes do pass. And I will go ahead, just to remind you on your microphones, if it's flashing, you're on mute. If you're going to speak, go ahead and press the button so that you've got a red light. All right, now we will go to our public comments. We will give 3 minutes to each individual. I will ask you that if you hear similar testimony that rather than repeating the exact same testimony, that you simply state that you're in agreement with the person that is speaking prior to that. And I believe that of those that have registered first, I know that Lisa McCarty sent me an email that she was not going to be able to be here. So we'll move to our second, which is Debbie Garza.
The red button.
The red button.
The red button. Can you hear me? Okay. Well, good morning. And just to confirm, Madam President, I have 3 different issues. So it might be a little more than the 3 minutes, but I promise you it won't be 9 minutes for each of the issues. So good morning. I'm Debbie Garza, the CEO of the Texas Pharmacy Association. Thank you to the President and the board members for allowing Texas Pharmacy Association the opportunity to comment on 3 different issues. Starting first regarding the final adoption of rules concerning emergency medication kits, which is Agenda D.1.2 on this morning's agenda. On behalf of the thousands of pharmacists, student pharmacists, and pharmacy technicians represented by the Texas Pharmacy Association, we do want to let you know we support the removing the prohibition against pharmacies duplicating drugs stored in emergency medication kits. Many of our members work extensively with long-term care facilities and recognize the need for this change. Under the current rule, in order for more than one provider pharmacy to service the same facility, they must enter into a written agreement, and the drugs in each kit cannot be duplicated. This rule creates difficulties in the delay of medication therapy because patients may be admitted to facilities before their drugs are available or in stock at one pharmacy provider's emergency kit. Facilities rely on the emergency kits to supply drugs until such time as the full prescription can be met by the provider pharmacy. So the reasonable change that y'all have in front of you today for a vote will help patients receive safe, necessary, appropriate, and timely care from pharmacies and the facilities they serve. So we respectfully ask the board to vote for final adoption of these rules concerning emergency medication kits. Second issue, we again appreciate the opportunity to comment, has to do with agenda item F.10, which is the discussion concerning non-sterile compounding rules. Again, TPA represents pharmacy professionals in all practice setting and knows firsthand the value pharmacists bring to improving health outcomes with patient safety of utmost concern. As we submitted and commented at the November 2021 quarterly meeting, Texas already has solid rules for non-sterile compounding in current pharmacy regulations, and we still feel that these rules in the current pharmacy regulations adequately address non-sterile compounding. With that being said, however, we do support the amendments to the rules as updated yesterday and was uploaded, I think, yesterday afternoon, with regards to the changes that were recommended. With these amendments, we feel they wisely reflect that pharmacists' extensive education provides them with the training to compound. Compounding is part of being a pharmacist, and current board rules already require training and proficiency necessary to properly and safely perform compounding duties. Also, current board rules also require pharmacists to obtain continuing education for the type of compounding they perform. Pharmacists are obligated and able to use their professional judgment to select the continuing education courses that are necessary to fill their gaps based on their skills, improve their specific practice, and enhance patient care. So we applaud the efforts of the board staff. We know they worked hard in talking with compliance officers and counsel to suggest these amendments to maintain patient access to much-needed non-sterile compound preparations. And so with these amendments, pharmacists will be able to continue to meet those needs, and they're really important for those pharmacies that aren't just core compounders, but are really filling needs of patients throughout the state. And then the third issue that we wish to comment has to do with the discussion concerning patient counseling, which is agenda item F.11. And again, appreciate the opportunity to comment on this as well. As Texas's most accessible healthcare providers, especially in rural and medically underserved communities, pharmacists know the importance of medication adherence and making sure that patients take their medications correctly to improve health outcomes. We were fortunate that Governor Abbott recognized the contributions pharmacists make to their communities as he worked to remove barriers that would allow pharmacists to continue to take care of their patients during the pandemic. One such barrier was the requirement of in-person patient counseling, which has been waived since March of 2020, and right now is continuing until June of 2022, unless, of course, we get rid of our disaster declaration. During this time, we've not heard of any increase in patient medication problems with the allowance of counseling through other means than in-person. TPA supports making permanent in rule the waiving of the in-person counseling requirement. The pandemic has changed the way patients act, and pharmacists have been able to provide patients necessary counseling where and when they want it, whether in person or orally through other means. Of course, waiving this requirement does not preclude pharmacists from counseling in person, and that decision again being left to the professional judgment of the pharmacist. And not to mention, unlike patients who may use mail order, they do not have the option of the in-person counseling, and we still have community pharmacies who freely can speak to their patients in person. So we respectfully ask the board to vote for adoption of proposed rules and make permanent the waiving of the in-person counseling requirement. So again, thank you for the opportunity to comment, and I'm happy to answer any questions y'all may have, or when you get to these issues on the agenda.
All right. And we will, when we get to the issues and we discuss them, we may call y'all back up to for any questions at that
Okay.
time.
Thank you.
Great use of your time. All right, next on the agenda is Veronica Velasquez, and I apologize if I mispronounce the name. Velasquez. Not here either. How about Shannon Bowie? believe that we will
All right, good morning, Madam President, board members. We're going to start today. I want to remind you that in the rule PDFs you've been provided, there are bookmarks with links to the lines with edits. Also, for the rules for adoption, you have received copies of the orders and preambles and the OneDrive link that was sent to you, and you should have them on your computers as well. Proposed at the February 2nd, 2022 board meeting, and they were published in the March 18, 2022 issue of the Texas Register. The first one, D1.1, regards Rule 281.66, amendments regarding pharmacist reinstatement requirements. Now, this suggestion came from staff because currently the standard for reinstatement is 45 hours of CE and a 1,500-hour internship. Staff feels the proposed amendments are more equitable, and these numbers more closely align with the numbers for an expired license that you'll find under Rule 283.10. On line 90, it outlines the reinstatement requirements for continuing education and or board-approved internship requirements based on a schedule. And it provides that in an application for reinstatement of a license to practice pharmacy, if it's granted by the board, the applicant, in addition to any sanctions or other requirements imposed by the board, shall complete approved continuing education and board-approved internship requirements according to the following schedule. And the rule, up for adoption here, lists out that schedule. If a license has been revoked or canceled for at least 1 year all the way up to over 10 years, it imposes a certain number of CE contact hours and a certain number of internship hours based upon how long the license has been revoked or canceled.
All right, any discussion? All right, I do want to thank staff because I think that this was definitely and I think I've stated it before, I think it was a step in the right direction on how we do things. So, with that, do we have a motion? We have a motion from Rick to adopt, so a second from Donnie. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, John?
All right, Madam President, the next one, D1.2, regards Rule 291-121. These are amendments concerning remote pharmacy services. And on line 326, you'll see that it deletes the requirement that provider pharmacies shall not duplicate drugs stored in the emergency medical kits. This essentially allows the duplication of drugs when more than one provider pharmacy provides an emergency kit to a remote location.
All right, and this is one of the issues that Ms. Garza spoke on, so if you have any questions, we can ask her to come back forward. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, can we have a motion? Donnie has made a motion to accept.
Second.
Daniel has done a second, so we have a motion for approval. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. John, if you'll take us through our proposed rules.
Yes, Madam President. The first one is D2.1. This is Rule 283.4, internship requirements. The proposed language is on line 81. And what it does is removes language that establishes that persons graduating from colleges or schools of pharmacy shall be credited the number of hours obtained and reported by the college. This essentially just requires that the college or schools actually report the number of hours.
And this is in line with with our previous language that we had adopted, correct? So it closes.
That's correct.
All right. Any questions for John? Any discussion?
That was put in there in the first place.
Originally, it was put in there to allow us to award the number of hours required to graduate. So if that was left blank, we could just, assume that since they graduated, they met the minimum number of hours. However, we're beginning to get calls from people, since we've changed the number of hours required to the number of ACPE hours. If they don't have that number of hours that we require, they're asking their schools to leave it blank and assuming that we're gonna award them more hours than they actually completed, which isn't true, but I think this makes it more evident that that's not an option.
But remember prior, we had it was 1,500 and we voted to go to ACPE so that we did not have to change it every time they changed it if there was a change. So this just cleans it up. A motion to propose.
I'll second.
A motion to propose.
All right, we have a motion to propose by Rick and a second by Daniel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Madam President, the next one is D.2.2. It's regarding Rule 291-33, amendments concerning operational standards. And on line 183, you're going to find some cleanup language here, essentially replacing the language storage and distribution device with dispensing and delivery system for a pharmacy that uses an automated system. And this cites to 291-121D regarding remote pharmacy services that use such systems. Essentially, this coordinates the language in 291-33 with the definitions that you can already find in 291-121D.
Any questions for John?
I have a question. Is there anywhere else within any of our documentation where these phrases exist? Will we be seeing similar requests in the future?
I don't think so. So this was one that we missed when we went through
Okay.
and tried to do it previously. And we just caught it this time when we were looking at the patient counseling that we'll discuss later.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? If I can have a motion to propose. We have a motion from Rick and a second from Donnie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. John, you want to take us through the next?
Next one is D.2.3.1, which regards Rule 291-104, amendments concerning centralized prescription dispensing. And on line 68, it adds clarification that a Class C pharmacy also engaged in outsourcing of prescription drug order dispensing to a central fill pharmacy shall comply with 291-125 regarding centralized prescription dispensing. And I'll tell you, this is the exact same language that you saw at the last board meeting.
All right, any questions on this one? I think it does, some of the comments and concerns that we had previously, I think it cleans that up. But I believe that we'll go ahead with the next, John, and we'll
Sure,
look at those together.
D.2.3.2, regarding 291-125, amendments concerning centralized prescription dispensing. This came to staff's attention because compliance had issued a warning to a pharmacy acting as a central fill pharmacy for a Class E that was outsourcing. And the purpose here is to clarify that Class E's are not prohibited from outsourcing centralized prescription dispensing. And to that end, you'll find on line 17 that it adds Class E pharmacy to the definition of centralized prescription dispensing as a requesting pharmacy. On line 20, it adds Class E to the definition of an outsourcing pharmacy. On line 34, it clarifies that a Class E pharmacy as one that may outsource prescription drug order dispensing to a central fill pharmacy under this rule, if allowed by their state, and if the pharmacies have the same owner or written contract/agreement and share a common electronic file or have appropriate technology to allow access to dispensing, processing of information. And finally, on line 122, we have some new language that provides nothing in this section shall be construed as requiring a non-resident pharmacy that outsources drug order dispensing to a central fill pharmacy to be licensed as a Class E pharmacy in accordance with 291-101 of this title, provided that the non-resident pharmacy does not physically ship, mail, or deliver prescription drugs or devices directly to a patient or patient's agent in this state. And this is a change from the last board meeting.
All right, any questions? Yes, sir.
You sure that's on? First of all, I want to thank staff for going back and taking some detail to clean up and alleviate some of the concerns that people expressed at the last board meeting. The additions of the lines, like 122 further, I think should help clarify and make people feel better about what the intent was originally. So I appreciate what you guys have done to clarify that. I think that was a very good step, so thank you all for doing that.
Any other questions?
You need a motion?
I was just making double check, there weren't any questions, I saw, we're good over there? All right, do we have a motion to propose?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to propose amendments for D.2.3.1 and D.2.3.2.
Do we have a second? We have a second from Rick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, John?
All right, our next one is D.2.4. This is regarding Rule 305.1. This is regarding the repeal of pharmacy education requirements. And I'll remind you, you voted twice on this issue, once for proposing and once for adopting the repeal, and that was at the last two board meetings. That was under the purview of the rule review. Well, to complete that process, you need another vote proposing the actual repeal in the Texas Register. Because arguably, the rule is duplicative of definitions that we already have in Rule 283.2 and Rule 283.3.
All right, do you want to go ahead and walk us through the next, and we'll look at the two together?
D.2.5 regards 305.2, repeal of pharmacy technician training programs. And again, you voted twice on this issue, once for proposing and once for adopting the repeal at the last two board meetings under rule review. And again, to complete that process, you need another vote proposing the actual repeal in the Texas Register. I will point out that Section 554.053 of the Pharmacy Act requires the board to issue standards for recognition of training programs, but it does not require this to be defined in rule. These standards could simply be placed on the website. Because we don't do what is currently in this rule, so it's not serving that purpose. And we don't currently require the completion of an approved program to become a registered technician. Further, the agency does not currently have the resources to perform what is included in this rule.
We have Bradley?
I've gotten multiple emails from a variety of people across the state. They highly recommend that we postpone this until the August meeting to give everybody a little bit more time to look into this rule. Standards need to be made for the training programs in the state. Right now, they're completely varied. There's just no standards. I mean, I can read some information here if you want, but I propose that we just postpone making a decision on this until the August meeting.
Do we have other thoughts? We have a proposal then, and we have a second. So my friend over there that is very good on Robert's Rules of Order will tell me that a vote needs to be taken before we can go forward.
Could I ask a quick question? Even if we were to vote to propose the rule, it would still be allowed for comment in the next meeting, wouldn't it?
That is correct. If it moved forward, it would go on the registry, there would be public comment, And
We
at
could
that
vote then.
time, we
I mean,
could,
could not, or vote for or against it at that time. This would just like, make it quicker, but it's really the only difference is that we would, vote for it again and allow public comment before that.
that's correct. I mean, we could, at this point, we can do nothing, we can move it forward. But if it did move forward, we would have, obviously have public comment again. You know, that same opportunity would be granted.
What do you think about that, Brad? I mean, it's still gonna get discussed at the next meeting if we do propose it forward. What do you-
Okay, so just to understand, if we approve, this will still come up on the next
Yes.
meeting
Yes.
and public comment, et cetera, et
Yes.
cetera?
So
Okay.
this is a proposal, and it'll go out for formal rulemaking if you vote to propose it, and at that point, you know, written comments and everything, and then it would come back for the adoption, and we would present all the written comments at the time that it's being voted on for adoption.
And I think we've taken this past couple of meetings to do this, just to try to move forward some things, and also, you know, still allow public to comment. We don't have to move forward with it at the next meeting, but at least moves it forward a little bit quicker.
All right, so we do have the,
Well, Bradley, were you back? You said okay, I'm on the go too.
Okay, so if we go ahead, okay, the motion, I guess,
Your motion right now is to have this change on hold in August, and we've been able to have a discussion because I seconded it. So if you want, you can withdraw your motion, I can withdraw my second. You just-
I'll withdraw my motion.
there you go. I'll withdraw my second.
all right. So let me ask the board this, before I ask for a motion to, propose. You know, based upon John's comment, he's very, you know, we did look at the fact that we do have to have standards there, but the standards could be on the website. Would the board like for the staff to draft up what that would look like on the website so that we can, as we move it forward, we could see what that language looks like?
I would agree to that. So if the board staff could create standards, or it could be a broad range of standards, maybe. I'm not 100% sure on the wordage here. Could we even create maybe a task force to look at this?
We've had two tech task force. My recommendation would be, let's see what the staff comes up with first before
Okay. Okay.
we travel down that road. Yes, sir.
I probably have had as many conversations as Bradley has on this issue in the last 10 days. And I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that we're not doing away with standards for technicians. Okay, repealing, the proposal to repeal is saying that we're not doing what's in 305.2 right now. We don't have the manpower, we don't have the resources to do it, and we definitely want standards for technicians. That's not what this is saying. Most of the phone calls that I've gotten feel like we're doing away with standards, and that is not the intent or the purpose of this repeal. We would like to put a statement on the website that says we will have standards for technicians, but you almost read 305.2 to state that we require that of our technicians to be a technician in the state of Texas, and we do not require a lot of those things that are in 305.2. So that maybe my phone calls and my emails will change focus and direction. We want exactly what the board wants to do as we move forward, and we want to do nothing that will harm the profession of a pharmacy technician. But at the same time, I think a lot of people are up in arms that we're doing away with standards, and that's not the intent here.
look into, what, creating some standards, or how should I word this?
Well, let's do this. I mean, we can give instructions to staff, but let's go ahead and go with, proposing, a motion to propose this, and then let's have a discussion on that. It's really two separate things.
Okay.
All right, so we're doing D.2.4 and D.2.5. So at this time, do we have a motion to propose?
Second.
Okay, so we've got a motion from Donnie and a second from Bradley to propose. All those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? Awesome. All right, so the second part of this then is, we made the statement, and as John stated, that we could have standards on the website. So if staff, and I believe that this is where
I have a question for John. How would that look like on the website if standards are being formulated? Would there be a tab or something where a technician could look at, or would that be in play?
Yeah.
What do you think? How's that work?
Yeah, I think you'd have a tab or easy link.
There's a tab for pharmacy technicians, so I think we most likely would have it there.
Okay.
And Shay does the mastermind of finding the right place to put things, so.
And what are other states? Have we checked other states, and how do they navigate this, or are we just, I know we just do Texas, but do other states have a similar method of how they do this?
We haven't looked into that, but we can do that for you if you'd like.
I mean, that'd be interesting to see how they do theirs. Without being in the middle.
All right. Good conversation. All right. John, you're still on the hot seat.
All right. The next we have is some rule review. Behind D.3, you'll find our rule review plan for fiscal year 2022 through 2025, the review and approval. State law requires that you review the rules on a 4-year cycle. And while that law requires you review the rules on a 4-year cycle, what you're looking for is to see if you still need those rules. If you need them, it's not about the content of them. And so the ones up for proposal today are D.3.1.1. This is Chapter 281 concerning administrative practices and procedures, and D.3.1.2, Chapter 311 concerning the code of conduct.
All right. Any questions? As you read through them, you'll see we use these a lot. Yes, sir.
If I may comment, that's on 3.1.1.1, which one that is. On section 281.65, which is the schedule of penalties, I think that obviously we need to have that, but I do like I just want to call the attention, we had some training on, you know, the culture of how we may or may not issue administrative penalty. I think the wording here may be appropriate. I think in the past, just my own experiences, I felt like we had to do these. You know, I had to always provide a penalty or something like that. I do like that, you know, we're taking into consideration more the appropriateness of whether we should or should not do a penalty based on the circumstances of, you know, just human nature, human error. And secondly, if the pharmacy license holder it really did not contribute to the issue at hand. And, you know, I felt like it would be the fault of the license holder, the pharmacy owner, or the company. So I think these rules are good, but I do like this situation where it says may be appropriate. We don't always have to go down. It's just a comment on my side. I think we've done a lot of that more recently, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, so again, this is just that we need the rule, not.
Yeah, I've just made a comment,
Yeah,
that's
no,
all.
it's very.
I'm not making any changes.
Good comment. Do we have a motion?
I move to continue keeping these laws.
All right, so we have a motion for proposal from Lori and a second from Donnie. Yes, sir.
Is that the bill that you're looking for in the budget?
It does.
Yes. All right, so we have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Thank you, John.
Thank
Great
you.
job, as always. All right, with that, we will go into our section on task force, and I will turn it over to our illustrious Executive Director.
Thank you, Madam President. Our compounding advisory group has not met since our last meeting. Our prescription monitoring program advisory committee has not met. We have a tentative date set of June 29th, and I believe my person that keeps my life straight says tomorrow it will not be tentative any longer. It will be a date set in stone of June 29th. That'll go out to all the members tomorrow. Our interagency prescription monitoring program group met last week. We had great conversation and discussion on the integration and narcs care proposal for this year, which we will discuss a little later. But we had very good participation at our meeting last week, and great comments from all of them about what a good job our PMP group is doing, and that they felt included and involved and appreciated the opportunity for input. And I welcome any questions if anybody has questions on any of those three topics.
And I'm sure Linda would rather be with us than in Galveston at this point.
Linda apologizes, but she was called out of town, so I'm Linda today.
All right, any questions for Tim? All right. Ann, I believe that it's your turn.
Good morning, Madam President, members. Behind in F.1.1, first slide, you'll find a summary data of the finance operations of our agency from September 1st, 2021 through February 28, 2022. We were appropriated $10.1 million, and through the end of the second quarter, we spent $4.3 million, which represents 43% of our annual budget. Salaries, wages, and other personnel costs make up approximately 60% of our annual budget. On the second slide, you will see how all the expenses are broken down into the various LEB expense categories. Okay. In F.1.2, you would see the travel budget for our board members. We have budgeted $15,000 for travel to Austin for regularly held board meetings, and through the end of the second quarter, we spent approximately $4,000. We also budgeted $1,500 for out-of-state conference travel, and as of February 28th, no expenses were incurred. In F.1.3, material changes to the contracts for goods and services. For the end of quarter 2, we have no material changes to the contracts for goods and services to report.
All right, before we go to LAR, any questions?
Any questions
for
about
Ann?
quarter 2?
So for travel, you know, we've got NEBP this month, so we will see some expenditure there. You know, obviously Ann does a great job with our finances, so we're very appreciative of that. All right, Ann, if you want to
Sure.
take us through the
Sure.
LAR.
Okay. All right, okay. So next, we're going to look at the proposed LAR exceptional items for the next biennium, which covers fiscal year 2024 through 2025. We have a total of 18 exceptional items that we broke down into 5 main categories. They include compensation, operations, prescription monitoring program, additional staffing needs, and finally, increased salary compensation for our ED. I'd like to point out that our agency, along with the other regulatory agencies, have engaged an HR consulting firm to conduct a market study of our employees' compensation. So, and then the results will not come back until mid or late May. So the request for compensation adjustment may change accordingly when we officially submit the LAR in August. Okay. I also like to point out that the total request for integration funding in NARCS Care is $7.4 million for the biennium. But TSBP's share of it will only be $1,480,000, which represents roughly 20% of the total cost. The remaining 80% of the cost will be shared amongst all the other 6 regulatory agencies. In our request, we've also included items for the improvement and update of the legacy systems. TWID, Texas Wholesale Distributor Database, and the RX pads. Tim and John Willards, our IT director, have been working actively with DIR to see if we can obtain funding from the state's Joint Legacy Information Technology Modernization Project to pay for that cost. As for the maintenance costs for the legacy system in year 2, we'll be responsible for 100% of that cost, and that comes out to be $223,000. So after all is said and done, we're looking at approximately $3.7 million to fund general agency exceptional items and $1.7 million to fund TSBP's share of statewide integration and NARCS Care and maintenance costs for the legacy systems. I'd like to also point out that the salaries for the new FTEs requested in 24-25 represent roughly 23% of the $3.7 million ask. And also, if you include the cost of living adjustment in the first item on compensation in the LAR request, that represents roughly 36% of the $3.7 million ask. And next, I'm going to turn it over to Tim to go over the exceptional items.
Thank you very much. We are so fortunate to have Ann Do in her position, and Ann has been so helpful. I'd like to just walk through some items quickly and answer any questions that you as a board may have, because I think it's very important that you understand there's a lot on the ask this year. There are many things that we are in need of. As you can see in the compensation, we have an estimate of a possible 8% cost of living. As Ann said, we are doing a cost of living study. Us and most of the other agencies in this building are doing a cost of living survey, and we hope to have those results within 2 or 3 weeks so we can look at what our real numbers are. We're also asking for an equity increase for our staff, and we're also asking for a potential 5% merit increase for those staff that are eligible. Those of you that live here, I guess it's anywhere in Texas, but particularly in Austin right now, it's a different place to live, and cost of living is different than it's ever been before. And we have lost several of our fantastic team members because we aren't paying them enough. And so we are making an ask, and we will see what happens, but that's why the compensation asks are there. It's time for us to ask and try to keep as many of our fantastic team members as we can. Operations, you see several things under operations. We have more SOA hearings that John has, and we have more reporter costs. We have a Spanish translator is required by law. We've got to do that. That's not an optional item. We have HPC agency operations, which is required. They tell us how much we have to pay for that. And then there'll be a slight increase in our PRN contract with the PRN group. The PMP piece is a huge piece, and as Ann said, John Willers and I are working tirelessly to try to get funding for as much under PMP as we can. The integration funding and NARCS Care, we got final figures for that last week, and it was quite a bit higher than we had previously thought it was going to be, but it is what it is, and we have worked with them. I did talk them down a little bit on the NARCS Care piece, but I haven't had any luck on the integration piece. Got an email as late as this morning asking about that from Bamboo. But we're hoping, if everything in an ideal, wonderful world, we're hoping that the TWID piece and the legacy system RxPad system update can come off of this list. We hope to know in October if we receive any funding from DIR, but we are working very, very hard on that. John Willers, my IT director, has worked many hours on this. Staff has worked many hours on this. Linda's worked many hours on this, and I'm making as many visits as I can trying to get this funding. It is one-time money that's available from DIR, and it's exactly for legacy updates and modernization of systems. We have many systems at our agency that were fantastic systems when they were written, and they no longer can be maintained. And so when they go down, we cripple the system and we cripple the citizens of Texas, because one of them is our RxPad system. And when the doctors can't get RxPads to write their triplicate prescription, then citizens can't get their prescriptions. So that $988,000 price tag looks huge. I agree with you, it looks huge, but that's what Deloitte's told us it's going to take to rewrite that system. So we're hoping all of those go away. We're working very hard on that. I want to talk through the staffing request and just kind of tell you what they are and why they're on here. And me and any of the team members that are in the room would be delighted to answer questions about this. We need a government relations specialist. Right now, Megan and Tim are the government relations specialist, and Allison, my predecessor's in the room. Allison, we're glad to have you. Allison understands what it means when you don't have a government relations specialist, and we need someone that is our eyes and ears on the Hill so that we do not miss anything that we need to be following or tracking or taking care of or being there. This person would give us assistance with legislative relationships in session as well as bills. We need a programmer. We have a fantastic IT department, but in today's world, we need a programmer that can be a true programmer. Our 4 people in IT are fantastic, but none of them are true programmers. This position would be in charge of internal programming for pharmacy board services and systems. This would allow for more timely and impactful solutions for the agency, as we currently rely on people outside of the agency who service other agencies as well. This means requests and fixes cost the agency money and can take a significant amount of time to occur, which impacts agency functions. So we would have somebody internally that could fix our problems immediately and us not have to wait in line for the people outside that do that. We need a new HR specialist. As the agency has grown, so have our HR needs grown. All of you that work in corporations understand that HR needs are different now than they've ever been before. So we need that middle person in HR to help with the workload there that's ever increasing. We need a data officer. This position will be responsible for management of electronic records data at the agency. If you think about where we were 10 years ago and where we are today, almost everything is electronic now. And I can tell you, when I walked in the agency in July and worked a couple of months with Allison and Kirsten, one of the first things they said was, the scanning project has got to happen. And they have worked tirelessly. My team has worked tirelessly since then, but we now have everything, or not everything, but we're working on getting everything electronic, and this person would take care of that. They would classify, secure, and set destruction requirements on all agency electronic records. As the agency moves to more electronic processes, this position becomes vital to the timely and security of agency electronic records. We need an accountant for. If something were to happen to Andu today, we would be in trouble. So we need a backup person there that would allow her to have assistance as well as possible succession planning in case of an emergency, and this would help her out tremendously. We need a program specialist for in enforcement. This position will serve as a backup to our enforcement managerial team, which has a large number of FTEs to manage. This position could assist in workload management and other administrative assistance. We need 3 new compliance inspectors. This would provide additional staff to perform the ever-increasing workload relating to inspections. This would allow for an increased number of inspections to occur each fiscal year, including regular new pharmacy, sterile compounding, and follow-up visits. We are in the process of hiring some new individuals right now, but in our larger areas, we are behind in inspections. My goal is to get inspections that are just regular, normal inspections down to every 24 months. And we have some in the state right now that are multiple years. They're not anywhere close to 24 months. So compliance has requested that we hire 3 new compliance inspectors to add to that team. PMP is, for the first time in a long time, fully staffed at the moment. They had 2 requests, one for a program specialist 2 and one for a program specialist 1. There are several things that we found in the last audit that we just completed before first of the year that need to be done and updated in PMP, and to do that, we would need more hands on deck. So those are those two requests. And then the last one on there is 3 new investigators. We have a task force officer in the San Antonio DEA office. One of our investigators is actually working under an MOU with us in the DEA in the San Antonio office, and it has proved to be very, very beneficial and has increased our relationship with the DEA and helped us many times with DEA issues. We would love to have 3 new, to have 1. Houston would like to have 1, and Dallas would like to have 1. So that's a dream, a request as we go down the road. And it is at the bottom of the list, but it would be very beneficial for us, for our agency, and for the citizens of Texas. So that's the positions, and I would welcome any questions on anything that I covered. Would love to answer any of your concerns or your questions. I know it's a big ask. In a real world, we'd like to get all these things. In a realistic world, we're not going to get all these things. But if we don't ask for them, I promise you we won't get them.
So I'll tag team, just make a quick comment, and I'll take that last line and I'll get right to you, Daniel. So one of the questions I had when I was going through this was looking at 24 and 25, why would 24 be more than 25? And that's the setup costs, when you think about the equipment that person's gonna need. And so staff did a really good job making sure that everything that was gonna be required to onboard somebody was in there. So I thought that was, you might have that question, so I wanted to kind of call that out because I think it was very smart of the staff to do that. The last line is executive director salary, and it's something that, we've known for a long time. It is legislatively mandated. And it's very interesting, as I was kind of looking at it, and I didn't know this, and I don't know how I missed it over the years, but the state puts all of the executive directors in the state into different levels. And so if you look at the nursing and the medical executive director, they're a level 5, whereas we're put in a level 4. As we were going through the process of interviewing, one of the things that came out was just kind of the disparity when you look at other states. So this ask is in there to kind of level set. Something we should have done a long time ago, I'll say. So, wanted to make sure that kind of got that out. So Daniel, you had a question.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. You made a comment a moment ago about the item 10 under staffing being at the bottom of the list. Is this list a priority list or listed based on urgency?
The top is the highest priority and the bottom is the lowest priority?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. And let me know if I'm off topic on this next question. How does the investigator, adding the 3 investigators, align with the potential of moving law enforcement staff to Schedule C? And is that something anticipated for the board under a law enforcement salary staffing perspective?
We've had a lot of discussion about the investigative staff here at the board. If they change to C, lots of things will have to change, and it will impact the budget drastically because of the salary level that we would have to pay them. We would love to work on becoming equitable with them, and Rolando and Chief Balmaris and I have talked at great length. I think right now we're not headed in that direction. They have explored. Would love for the board to have some discussion on that at some point. Now is probably not the right time to do that because it's not part of LAR discussion.
Right. Okay. That was mine.
But at some point, it'd probably be good for y'all to understand the ramifications of what does C mean, what would it do to the budget, what would the numbers look like, how much would change and all that, but probably not right now.
Okay, thank you.
So while not part of the discussion, just so everybody, because I see some confused faces, and as somebody that, you know, I have a retired police officer in my household, you know, I'm probably a little bit more in tune. You want to just kind of say what a level C is to?
Is that appropriate for this particular discussion, or can it be added to the
No.
agenda for August?
Megan saying no.
Right, yeah.
All right,
I'd rather
then
see
I'm
that
then I'm
brought
gonna leave
in August.
Your confused
Just
faces
tap me on the
alone.
shoulder again.
You can ask Julie offline, she can tell you everything about level C.
Okay, I'll add that for August.
All right. Yes, sir.
I support the ask, but also, as government employees, you're, especially if you're having turnover, you're going from a defined benefit now to a defined contribution plan. Do they realize what they're giving up if they're leaving? Like, do you have any kind of a financial statement? Here's your salary.
We're
and then
doing-
all of a sudden,
We're
this is
doing a
what-
lot of, we're doing a
this
lot
is
of
your pension.
education. We're doing a lot of education right now, and we started that in our all-staff meeting last time, and we can do more in our next all-staff meeting about what the total package looks like. But many of them know that, and we've talked about the big package, not just the take-home pay,
Yeah.
but the big package.
Yes.
And they're human, and their take-home pay is what speaks to them. You know, when you talk about how many days off they have and the benefits they have and all those kind of things. I lived in city government in Tennessee for 30 years, and I could show them what their benefit package was and what their paycheck was, and they could care less what this was. They should care what that is. This is what, trying to be as transparent with our team members as we can, trying to show them the whole picture, and they've been very appreciative. But I'll put that on our next all staff to even talk more about the benefit package. I think that would be a good plan.
Makes a huge difference.
And Rick, there are also, ERS itself has a lot of webinars, and we always share those with staff where they explain all the different, you know, which group you fall in and what you get and that. But of course, it's up to them whether or not they want to actually watch the webinar.
Right. Well, it's an educational process.
Definitely.
And the alternative is, you could be in the commercial side, and when someone turns 60, the average savings is $57,000. Versus if they were on the government side, they have a pension till they take their last breath. Huge difference, so I'm just saying, it's an educational process, but.
Maybe we need to invite you to come to our next all staff.
I do this on a daily basis.
I know. We might Zoom you in for our next meeting, I mean, because it would be different coming from you. Yeah. Thanks for offering. Thanks for letting me offer you to come to our next meeting.
Donnie?
Hey, Tim, on this government relations specialist number 3, does that mean, what does the number 3 mean? Is there a
That's the
team?
classification. There's a government specialist 1, government specialist 2, government specialist 3.
And what is the difference in
price.
those?
That's the price category. That's the salary range.
Okay.
And each one of those categories list what we would expect from them.
Okay.
And the government specialist 3, everything that's in that government specialist 3 are the skills that we need for this person to have.
Okay, who does this now?
Nobody.
Nobody.
We don't have one. We had one 2 years ago.
Okay.
And she had a JD PharmD degree, which would be ideal and wonderful if I had that pharmacist attorney background. And I guess my dream person would be a man or a woman that had a JD pharmacy degree. But that doesn't have to be a pharmacist. It may be a government person that's just fantastic on the Hill, that has all those relationships, that can track everything.
So when she left, we just didn't fill that position, is that correct?
At that point, that's correct.
So that is one that essentially has been vacant.
Right.
Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, I'm assuming that once this proposal arrived on our desk, there had been previous iterations. I'm curious, what fluctuations did you make in eventually getting to this proposed number? Because for me, I'm looking at it, I'm thinking it's not enough of an ask.
We started, Ann Driscoll and Andu and I started probably 5 weeks ago with proposal number 1. And we took all of our teams and they gave us their requests.
Right.
They gave us all of their asks, their dream list, their wish lists, and we put it all on the table. And we started with it, and then we brought Megan involved, and she carved out time and worked with us. We started out with about 4 pages, and it was 18 different items in priority from 1 to 18. And I thought, how in the world am I gonna do 15 minutes in front of a committee on the Hill with 4 pages of 18 items? We then got gracious help from somebody at another board that has done this for 30 years. And he was fabulous and gave us some really good pointers of how to lay out a LAR proposal and how to present it in this fashion. We have sat down and looked at each one of these positions, and this is not the bottom salary for each of the staff positions. It's not the top salary, but it's kind of a medium salary. So we're hoping that we have a little room to work with there. You know, we've got to be careful of what we bring somebody in at and what our current employees are paid, and be fair across the board. There's a balancing act here. So Daniel, you may be right. This may not be a big enough ask, but we felt like it was a huge ask, and we felt like it are in what we're asking for. It's things that we need. It's things that we're behind in. It's things that the agency needs. The agency is growing. We're doing fantastic things, but all of these things are things that are needed.
Because I think, based on those comments, thank you, it definitely justifies that #1 staffing priority on the government relations. And the requests on compensation, I think, are in line. I'm supportive of this. I would certainly support this proposal. I would have also been supportive of increasing that ceiling and taking a bigger swing and seeing what falls lower. But I'm supportive of what you have here.
And what portion of this then will be passed on to the registration holders?
Well, we've got,
We're gonna cover
that's our next.
I mean, I think that's an important consideration as we're looking at this too.
Yeah. And that was another big piece of the puzzle here as we had these discussions. Exactly what Lori just asked.
So are there any other questions about this document? So kind of, Lori kind of set the stage for Ann. You know, we do need to be a self-sufficient
Sure.
for these.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what does this look like for our licensing population if everything on this list is approved by the legislature next year in 2023? For the PMP piece, the integration, we're looking to assess an additional $36 each for both pharmacy and pharmacist licenses based on the weighted average of revenue collections. Okay, $36. But in the footnote, you will find that if the pharmacies were to bear 100% of the cost of PMP, we're looking at an increased PMP fee of $206 per pharmacy license. If the cost is shared 50-50 between the pharmacies and the pharmacists, we're looking at an increased PMP fee of $103 per pharmacy license and $22 per pharmacist license. Finally, to cover the increased cost to fund the general agency exception items of $3.7 million, in option number 1, based on weighted average of revenue collections between pharmacies and pharmacists, we're looking at an increase of $113 per application fee for pharmacy, $71 additional application fee for pharmacists. In option number 2, based on weighted average of revenue collections amongst pharmacies, pharmacists, and the techs, we're looking at an increase of $94 per additional application fee for the pharmacy, $59 for the pharmacist, and then $17 for the tech. Lastly, in option number 3, if we do the across-the-board fee increase, we're looking at an additional application fee of $43 for everybody. So this covers the fee option portion of the presentation.
And Ann said this, but I want to make sure all the board's clear because I don't want anybody to go home and say, I didn't realize that. We have not included the PMP numbers other than the NARCS care and the integration in this page she just went over.
Correct. This is just our
The
share.
maintenance fees that would be our responsibility are included here.
Correct.
Maintenance fees and the NARCS care and the integration are included in these numbers. Okay? Just want to make sure everybody's clear on that, because I don't want you to go home and then us get the miracle and get the money, and y'all go, oh, those numbers are going to go down. Those numbers are not included in this.
So obviously, this is 24, 25, so this is the beginning of the process.
Correct.
You
We
know.
don't, yeah.
Go ahead, Ann.
Yeah, we don't submit the official LAR to LBB until August.
All right, so
So
that's
we're
gonna,
3 months away.
yeah, so that's gonna give us time to get the HR, results back. We're not deciding now on how licensure will look or what these costs look. It's just, this is just to start to give us an idea of where things might go. So what we do need at this time, if there are no other questions, is a proposal to approve the exceptional items as presented and allowing Tim, in consultation with me, to make adjustments for additional circumstances that might arise.
So moved.
We have a motion from Daniel and a second from Suzette. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much, Ann, and thank you so much for your work.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, it is 10:07, and I guess if I put my glasses on, I did not see, is Will here?
Yes, he did got here.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
We add a new clock to your LAR.
See, I can't.
Not for this ring, not for this ring. The next one will get one.
Yeah, we won't be. Take the clock with you.
That would be a TDI
That's a
thing.
TDI thing, yeah.
Total TDI thing. All right, so, with that, we can go ahead and, look at the, PRN, and I believe Ms. Carolyn will start us off, and, Will, if you wanna come forward, there you are.
Hello, good morning to the board. I'm Will Turney, case manager with the Professional Recovery Network, and I'm here to report for the third quarter of fiscal year 2022. The Professional Recovery Network continues to receive a steady number of referrals regarding potentially impaired pharmacists and pharmacy students. Compliance by current participants is acceptable, and all concerns regarding public safety have been reported to the Texas State Board of Pharmacy. PRN continues to offer an individualized approach to the supports and accommodations offered to our participants through the COVID-19 pandemic. This includes continuing to provide participants with the option to complete their evaluations and recovery-related meetings through online platforms if preferred. PRN regional coordinators will continue to provide monthly regional meetings to our participants via online meeting platforms or teleconferences to ensure ongoing peer supports are being offered. On March 4th, 2022, PRN presented to the P1 students at the University of Houston College of Pharmacy during their Drugs, Alcohol, and You event. At this event, PRN discussed the topic of problematic professional substance use, as well as spoke about the PRN program and the services that we provide. PRN continues to explore opportunities to increase program visibility to create awareness of the PRN program, and we will be continuing our outreach efforts to the other pharmacy schools in the state of Texas. The TPA conference is scheduled to take place live and in person on July 15th through 17th, 2022, and will be held at Hyatt Regency, Austin. PRN hosts seminars biannually, and we are excited to announce that our upcoming spring seminar will be live and in person for the first time since the pandemic. It is scheduled for Saturday, May 14th, 2022 at Norris Conference Center in Austin, Texas. PRN participants are required to attend these seminars as it is stated in their support agreement. Our speaker will be Joseph Diaz, who has worked in the mental health field for over 14 years in various capacities and nearly a decade as a licensed clinical counselor. Mr. Diaz was recruited by Houston's Memorial Hermann Prevention and Recovery Center as a clinical program specialist, where he left the clinic at the Austin Intensive Outpatient Program by providing treatment services for patients seeking help in recovering from drug and alcohol addiction and dually diagnosed with mental health needs. Mr. Diaz will present on the DSM-5 diagnostic criteria, where the summary of the topic will focus on the new diagnostic criteria for substance use disorders with an objective to focus on explaining and interpreting how changes affect both clinicians and patients. He will also discuss and evaluate the clinical benefits and drawbacks of said changes and provide an overview of understanding to our participants who are often left with questions and a lack of general understanding about their diagnosis. PRN is scheduled to hold our biannual advisory board committee meeting the morning of the spring seminar. The meeting is scheduled for Saturday morning on May 14th, 2022 via Zoom. And as for the legislative budget board numbers, the numbers for September 1st, 2021 through February 28th, 2022 were submitted to TSBP on March 10th, 2022. LVB numbers include all licensed pharmacists and pharmacy students enrolled in the PRN program. We had 6 volunteer pharmacy students, 1 board-ordered pharmacy student, 29 volunteer pharmacists, and 42 board-ordered pharmacists. And please see the attached PRN expenditure report for the September 1st through 2021 through February 28th, 2022. And that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you very much, Will. Carolina, I
Thank
believe
you,
you're
Will.
up for it.
And staff's chart is at F.2.1, and this is the chart you're familiar with. It includes the number of individuals historically for the last 3 fiscal years that have participated with the PRN program. And then also at the bottom, this is the current fiscal year. For those individuals that started the fiscal year, it's a cumulative count, and we add to it each quarter. And so you can see the number of individuals that were added in the second quarter of fiscal year 2022.
Yes, sir.
Will, thank you for coming today. For all of
Yeah.
your benefit, Raquel is still with us.
Mhm.
She's just unavailable today,
Right.
but Will stepped out of his box, and he's here today, and we are thrilled that you came to present to us, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
All right, I have 10:13. Let's go ahead and take a break until 10:30.
Okay.
All right, so we'll call our meeting back to order. I believe that, I think it's gonna be Daniel Weaver's here, but we do have a internal audit report.
Skip me.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I skip you? I did, I'm just gonna skip Tim. All right, so I'm gonna turn it over to Tim for the strategic plan and our customer service. Okay.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Strategic plan behind tab F.3, you will find the agency strategic plan which was provided to you. The strategic plan is a report that we are required to produce, and the structure, layout, and required items are dictated by the LBV instructions for preparing and submitting agency strategic plans. At the February board meeting, you discussed and approved 3 core issues that you wanted to address, and those are on page 9 of the PDF under other relevant considerations. The other item for you to review and approve is the agency customer service report, which is actually part of the strategic plan under tab F.3 and begins on page 39 of the PDF. The board's customer service scores indicate that 86% of the individuals who complete the survey expressed overall satisfaction with services received by the board. Non-satisfied responses included items such as dissatisfaction with outcomes of complaints and items beyond board jurisdiction such as customer service. We regularly meet to discuss the results and any received comments so I and the directors can address any negative feedback or pass along positive praise of board staff and suggestions received. Want you to know that we take this very seriously and we do look at every comment on these. First meeting that I had with Allison before she left, I thought, we really don't do this, and well, we really do. We look at every individual comment, and if it's positive, we pass that along. If one of our team members is identified for being over the top in customer service, we send them a note thanking them for how hard they've worked and what they've done. If it's negative, we try to figure out why it's negative. If we can correct it, we try to correct it. This 86% may actually be a little higher, but we can't change that number, because there are several that make extremely positive comments and then mark us negative. So we know that they just marked it the wrong thing, and that frustrates me. But anyway, it's a great process, and it's a great exercise that we go through on a regular basis. We need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Daniel, second. Second from Donnie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the strategic plan does pass. All right. Our next is our annual internal audit report, and I believe that Daniel Graves is here.
Daniel, if you'll make your light solid red by pressing that, you'll be on. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me this morning. This is an internal audit status report. This is not the annual report, so the item line on the agenda is just slightly off. However, you should have a one-page summary of our internal audit activity that was included in your packet. This is just a status as of April 28th to be prepared and issued in your binder here for this meeting. We have made great progress on our internal audit plan. The one internal audit on the plan this year was over licensing and licensing renewals. So that scope of that audit is covering everything from application submittal and processing all the way through issuance, exam verifications, including processes for inactive licenses, exemptions, and this covers both individuals and facilities. And so the status I have for you today is we have finished our field work for that audit, and it's going through our internal quality control review process, and we will be sitting down and going over any findings and observations we have with the agency this month, as well as issuing the final report this month. So I will have it to formally present to you at the next board meeting, as well as far as timing goes, with all the rest of the internal audit plan, we have one internal audit follow-up from a prior finding from our predecessor auditor. We'll follow up on that one item and also issue a report at that time, as well as having updated our risk assessment, and I will have for you the annual internal audit report that is due as part of the Texas Internal Audit Act. I'll have all 3 of those reports ready to issue and present to you at the next board meeting in August. So as far as timing goes, we're on great track. with the internal audit plan. All the agency personnel that we've interacted with have been really helpful and forthright, and it's been a good experience through our first year as your internal auditor, first full year as your internal auditor. With that, that's all I have planned for you as part of the status of where we're at on the internal audit plan, and we'll welcome any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Grave?
This is our first year with Daniel and his team, and just for the record, it's been a great experience. You know, you hope you have a good relationship with your auditor, and when they find things, we want to correct them and make them better. But the team that he has audited has been, and when they found issues, they were great to work with. So, Daniel, to you and Jeff and the rest of your team, thank you, and we look forward to a continuing relationship there.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for your report. All right, next on our agenda is a little bit of prep work. Lily had sent this out. NABP is fast approaching. It'll be May 19th through the 21st, and Rick and I will be there. Unfortunately, Tim has family member that is graduating, so we're super excited for that, but very sad that he will not be with us. The resolutions have not been published yet, but we did see if there were questions, concerns, and kind of get a little bit of a litmus test as to, how you wanted to vote on them as they come forward. So these are as they were submitted. They're not, the official wording's not there in part. But then, we can definitely discuss them further from there. So District 1 brought forward that they wanted to convene a task force that includes the appropriate stakeholders to examine the definition of pharmacist as a healthcare provider, and then make amendments to the Model State Pharmacy Act and Model Rules of the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy to include a fundamental or foundational definition of pharmacists as healthcare providers. I kind of think I know how y'all would vote on this, but just wanted to see if there were any thoughts, concerns. I got a thumbs up from Jenny. No, there are no concerns there. All right. District 2 brought in electronic prescription or prescribing functions in the pharmacy practice. The foundational information they gave is that there are at least 24 states that have adopted or mandated e-prescribing, and the use of e-prescribing, as it continues to evolve. So we know that we are already one of the 24. This will be one that, we'll definitely move forward with because it's in line with what we have now. But I wanted to make sure that you had that. What their resolution is that NABP will conduct a survey of states and U.S. jurisdictions to collect data regarding pharmacy e-prescribing concerns, and if appropriate, appoint a task force to further study the issue and make recommendations for improving e-prescribing functionality. So it's very much in line with what we already have in place. The next resolution is a committee to discuss adverse event reporting for compounded medications. And it states that pharmacy compounding comprises a significant portion of licensed activity regulated by state boards of pharmacy. And as such, their resolution is that NABP, along with other stakeholders included, but not limited to the Alliance of Pharmacy Compounding, will form a joint committee to convene, deliberate, and make recommendations on this important issue no later than the autumn of 2022. So they're looking at kind of a framework that adverse reporting would occur across states, and I think that it would give us a little bit more knowledge as we look at compounders that do ship in. So thoughts on that? I have one thumbs up. Conversation. All right. District 7, which is co-supported by District 8, is a resolution on multi-state licensure. And I'm going to go ahead and read through this whole thing because I want to make sure that I understand where your thoughts are on this. This is whereas other health professions have developed infrastructure for multi-state compact license portability to increase access to care. Whereas NABP conducted a task force and published a report on mutual recognition licensure in September of 2018, recommending further enhancements and evaluation of license portability. Whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the need for interstate portability of pharmacist licensure and practice. Whereas during the COVID-19 pandemic, NABP Passport was created, thereby facilitating states to allow individual facilities, pharmacists, technicians, and interns to practice into their state without obtaining additional state-specific licenses. Therefore, it is resolved that NABP create a system to allow efficient interstate portability of state licensure compact. Thoughts? Daniel's got a thumbs up. I mean, I'd like some comment, some conversation a little bit on this, because I think that this is something that, it was something that we did use. You know, I'll say that in my practice, you know, I applied for medication administration license for Louisiana at the time, because you could do that with and they recognized my Texas license, which was super beneficial during COVID. But we need to look at what the implication is on our state and, you know, how we would use that. And I believe, Rick, you had a comment?
No, I think taking the lessons from COVID is important. I think the portability of licensing and being able to work together as states to shorten that gap for pharmacists to get licenses in different states is important. I think some states have a lot of different rules and all that, but I think it's worth considering that this will help in future considerations, you know, hopefully not another pandemic, but it just shows like an inner respect for each state's rules, but also allowing the pharmacists to quickly move to another state. You know, most other professions have a little bit more relaxed rules when they go across states and have to work in different places. It doesn't mean that they're not aware of or observe the state rules that in that state. But I think this resolution kind of starts a discussion, something similar to that. That's what it's saying.
Would this take the place of reciprocity? Or is this for emergency situations only? I'm just curious.
There, you know, and again, we don't have the final word, so it could be that it could be an emergency, or it could be a fast track to reciprocity.
Okay.
Their intent was fast track to reciprocity, I believe. We had discussion at District 6, 7, and 8, and Lori and Julie and I were there, and they asked all of us to endorse this, and District 6 chose not to. We're part of District 6. So we had discussion there and felt like it, maybe discussion is good, but the intent of the writer of this is pretty obvious and to fast track. If my colleagues in the audience are looking hard at me, do you agree with that? Okay. Yeah. So, just FYI. There's big ramifications here. We need to make sure we think about everything that it's going to affect. Not that I'm for or against it. I'll do whatever y'all want to do. That's what I'm here for. But just so you'll understand, it's not just a simple, in my opinion, it's not a simple process. There's a lot more to this than just a compact.
Other comments? Is there a consensus or thought as to, when we were in part of 6, 7, and 8 as a whole, District 6, which we were part of, voted no, but 7 sponsored it, and it was co-supported by District 8.
And so Julia, a vote in favor would mean what exactly? I know we don't have it finally in writing, but I'm hesitant to commit to moving forward with it without really knowing what full implication.
Well, as the resolutions go, it's just then a recommendation of NEVP. I mean, we would still, we would still have final authority as to how our state practices and what we do with it. Nothing would change within the state until we put forward.
Just have to take action further.
So what are District 6 concerns of not going forward?
The main concern, and I mean, y'all correct me on the conversation, was just that it would dilute the current process in the states, that we wanted to, keep maybe the rigidity, so that, as people came through, they had to, go through everything that state had in place. It was more along those lines as far as the conversation.
I think it's the autonomy, Rick. Arkansas doesn't recognize MPJE, and so they have their own tests, and then we recognize it, but we use it in lots of different ways, and this potentially could take that away. But now all this resolution says is to form a group to study a compact. So some feel like that needs to happen, and I probably think that needs to happen, but some also take when you vote for it that you're for the compact. And I'm not sure that we're to the point yet that any of us are ready to say we're for the compact. I think all of the factors that what is a compact and how does a compact work and what authority the state has and all those issues are the things that all of us should be concerned about as we move forward.
Well, and just for clarification, it does, as it states now, it's create a system, not a task force.
So there you go.
Yeah, so a little bit more insight.
Uh-huh.
I just want the board to know that this is the initial step of the resolution.
Yeah.
They go to the resolution committee at the annual meeting. They would vote whether to move forward.
Yeah.
So right now, we just put it in place and put it out there to kind of know about that. I just want you to realize these resolutions may not make it to the administration.
Right.
So what action would you
Just your gut feelings. I mean, we have the ability to vote for, against, or if we're conflicted, we can abstain from voting on it.
And when you say we have the ability to vote, you're talking about the ability to vote during the conference on May 19th through the 21st?
Yes. So I am our voting delegate, and I want to make sure that as I vote, I'm taking your thoughts collectively with me. And Rick will keep me in line.
What
And
day
if I
is this?
if something happens to me, Rick will step up and vote.
What
Good
day
luck,
is
Rick.
this voting taking place? Yeah, but what day is it actually taking place? So we can make sure Rick's awake.
The actual vote's on the 20th
Okay.
for the resolutions, if I remember the agenda correctly.
So you're saying that this verbiage may change by then?
Yes, yeah. It may not come, like Jeannie said, it may not actually come to the floor completely, it may change. So just kind of need a gut, and this is the process that we go through every year. Votes before, we've kind of discussed them a little bit, but there were some in here that I really thought that, I wanted to hear what your thoughts were before we went. And this is one that, I wanted to make sure I kind of knew what your thought process was.
I'm personally hesitant.
My support would be to move forward with further exploring it, but I don't want to get into a situation where we've diluted our own processes. Because I think we have a lot of faith in the fact that we have a background check that's a requirement, and we have a licensure exam that's, at least I feel comfortable with. I want somebody who's practicing in my state to know what the laws are. And, but I think exploring it.
Anymore. Whereas the MPJE item writing and review activities require significant Board of Pharmacy staff resources, and whereas many state-specific laws are similar but if not identical, And whereas knowledge of federal law is important to the practice of pharmacy and the protection of the public, and whereas it may be burdensome for applicants to acquire reciprocal licensure across state lines, and whereas there is a need to assess competency on federal and state pharmacy lines, therefore is resolved that NABP examine the development of a national standardized pharmacy jurisprudence examination for the state boards of pharmacy to assess competency for licensure. So Ohio would like to have, kind of like NABP, you know, when we take they give an NABP NABLEX, that a law exam would be set up very similar, that it would be, one test for all.
And no state-specific test.
That is what Ohio would like. I see a no.
I don't understand how you would do that. I mean, obviously there are the DA rules, there are the federal rules.
You would cover nothing in the state, sure.
There's so much state variance.
Yeah, you would have nothing that were state-specific. That's my concern about that test.
So you have one no so far?
I think I've got at least two.
We got three.
Three.
Four.
I see, I've got more, all right, so we have a good consensus there, I thought. All right.
Julie, did any other districts, on this, have you heard anything from the 6 on what they think of that? Probably.
This one has not, this one was submitted afterwards, and, you know, and NABP, when they issued these, you know, they said these are exactly how they came to us, so there's no, you know, no wordsmithing, no, you know, nothing, so that was way after the meeting. The next one is very similar in the fact that it came directly to them from, the Arizona State Board of Pharmacy. And this one is, looking at compounders called outsourcing facilities and, section 503B. And so what they would like in their resolution is that NABP work with the FDA, its member boards, and other stakeholders to develop a pathway to enable a 503A pharmacy under common ownership with a 503B outsourcing facility to dispense preparations compounded by such 503B outsourcing facility. Central fill for compounding, basically, common ownership, and basically what they're looking at, and I'll just backtrack a little bit. So, it describes the conditions that must be satisfied for human drug products compounded by or under the direct supervision of a licensed pharmacist in the outsourcing facility to qualify for exemptions from 3 sections of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act, and whereby section 503B is the prohibition of wholesaling, specifies that drugs will not be sold or transferred by an entity other than the outsourcing facility that compounded such drug, but does not prohibit administration of a drug in a healthcare setting or dispensing a drug pursuant to a prescription executed in accordance with section 503B upon a written prescription from a practitioner licensed by law to administer such drug. So they're looking at the wholesale distribution does not include intercompany distribution of a drug between members of an affiliate. So basically that central fill process is kind of what they're looking at.
Is that creating that avenue, or is it just looking at discussing it?
Well, their wording is, and this again is from the Arizona State Board, so it may look totally different when we see, under common ownership with a 503B outsourcing facility to dispense preparations compounded by such 503B. So it's to create a path.
purchasing comes out of the
Common ownership. So, it's to create a pathway. Again, we would.
Because the restriction comes on.
It'd still be up to you as a board on how we do it
Yeah.
in Texas. They're just saying create a pathway. It's still up to you as a board.
But you're needing at least some guidance from a consensus of us to let you know which way to go.
Yeah, just
I'll be a no.
no.
Yeah, I don't know what the intent is.
Specialized facilities, everybody feels everything in one place.
And I would guess that there'll be a little bit more discussion on this one. Kind of an unsure. Alright. Did you? Alright, that is actually all of the resolutions. Rick and I will, look forward to the meeting and bringing back information from NABP. It's always a great meeting. As we go forward, I encourage, y'all to attend district meetings as well as NABP, but, we look forward to representing you well.
It was also a district meeting, in Oklahoma, right?
Yes.
Later on,
The end
August.
of August, yes.
So that's something to consider too. I think the voice of the board is important. There's just a few, so the more the merrier, I think, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And we offered at the last district meeting to help assist Oklahoma in whatever they're a very small board, so with whatever additional ways we could help them. I've reached out to them once, but haven't heard anything back, so while we're at NABP, we'll see if there's anything that we can do, so.
And Multagon is in the fall, and it's in New Orleans, and I would love for all of you to go to New Orleans with me.
All right. With that, our next agenda item is the report on prescription monitoring program, and I will turn it over to Tim for that.
I'm Linda again. You have a one-pager behind this agenda item, F.6. We are working with University of Texas, as we have for several years, developing these one-pagers, and this week we have brought HHSC into the picture as well. HHSC is the one that actually provides the grant that pays for our relationship with University of Texas. Look forward to some new one-pagers at our next board meeting. They're developing some graphs and things that will be very helpful, and Shada's going to help make those happen and look good and have them on the website and all those things. But if you have any questions about this, I will get you the answers. I probably can't answer them, but I'll get you the answers. But this kind of gives you a snapshot of where we are in the last quarter on PMP.
Any questions for Tim?
That's a good question. I don't think so, but Suzette, let me check. Let me check and we'll get back with you.
It would be nice to see some trickle down over time.
Good information. We can do that.
I'm always amazed that pharmacists are lower, but when you look at who uses it, physicians use it more than pharmacists, so definitely some opportunity. Very possible, yeah.
They can't hear. I'm sorry. If you'll talk, turn your microphone on.
I'm just saying, probably their physician assistants or assistants.
But they're logged in as a physician, yeah.
They're not supposed to. They're
I
not
know.
supposed to be.
I know.
We're having a lot of educational issues right now, making sure that they understand that whoever hits our system as the person looking is the person we're expecting to be looking. I promise you we're having lots of talks about that, right, Megan? because for us to track it, it's got to be the right person looking.
All right. Any other questions or comments? I do like the trend idea. That's a good ask for Linda. All right. I believe that Ann Driscoll is going to come up and give us a report on the move. Show us a little video. I know.
Do I need to move?
No. That's what I was wondering, if you and I needed to split.
Hello, everyone. Have a couple of items to update you on the move. We are the last agency to move. Veterans Commission is the only person after us, so we are not their highest priority at this moment in time, so we don't have a lot of updates. What I did want to tell you is that our agency move team met for the first time. We voluntold some people and some people volunteered. Team members from each of our teams to help facilitate all of the information sharing and planning that needs to happen. It was an extremely productive meeting. They had some great ideas. We covered a lot of information of things that we need to do over the next 60 days. Yeah, I know, 60 months. To get ready, because we have items occurring in September that require prior notice. So while we're not moving until September, there are some things that we're going to have to start doing in July. And they were extremely valuable resources. They have been sent back to their teams to discuss, to look at, did we miss anything, but also just to kind of troubleshoot. And that's an ongoing discussion with staff. We do have an update that security will be provided as long as the state owns this building. So that's an update from our last meeting. Let's see here. I sent y'all an email this morning with a link. As board members, you have state emails. You can sign up for the Move newsletter from TFC. That's where this video comes from. You must use your state email to get that, but as board members, because you have state emails, you can sign up for that. There have been 3 so far. They're generally informational. They do have some nice pictures in them sometimes, and then sometimes you'll get videos that are not available on the website, such as the one that I'm going to show you right now, which I did contact them to get permission to show at the board meeting. Because this is a tenant video, and she said yes, that we could show this. So this is a tour of the Capitol complex. They briefly show the Barbara Bush building, the Barbara Jordan building, which is 2 blocks down, about 2 blocks down from us. But a majority of what you're going to see on here is the Bush building, which we will be moving into. If you do, I'll pass along to TFC. You clapped. Yeah, Shada and I debated. I did want to point out to all of the board members, the cube that's out in the waiting room in the lobby area is the actual cube that will be going in for our staff on our floor. Stop by, take a look at it. We've been told that ours is not gonna vary at all, that is the cube that our staff will be handling. Approximately 80% of our in-house staff will be in cubes. There will be a very limited number of offices. And then last time someone asked about a brief update on who was moving when. Right now, there are 3 big move groups. There's one in April, there's one in June, and there's one in July. Who's in this building that's moving? Majority of those people are moving in late June or July. So medical board, nursing, those people are all moving in July right before, no, I'm sorry, nursing and medical are moving in August. Vet, optometry, occupational therapy, dental examiners, those are agencies that are moving in June. I tried to broach visits. Because of that schedule, they're still really hesitant to even talk to me about visits. Because we're so far out, they're hesitant to talk to me about videos. So I will keep asking specifically about information for our space. As soon as that's available, we will definitely let you know. Did y'all have any questions?
So the group that would.
An update. There were 3 agencies that were moving. The biggest one is lottery. They have 5 floors of space. That was the biggest one to move in. They will actually be holding their lottery drawing at that building and televising it from that building. So, I mean, they have a lot going on there. And what I've been told by TFC is that there will be glass front that people could watch it if they wanted to. They're moving first because they're going live from that building as soon as possible.
They did get access the 27th. I'm a member.
27th.
I'm a member of a group of executive directors, 2 different groups, and we meet on a regular basis. And we're all excited because we're hoping that they get all the kinks worked out. And so when we move, it's just going to be smooth sailing. But last Wednesday, the 27th, they did get their keys, whether it be badges or whatever, and that they were moving over the weekend. Now, I haven't heard since the move whether they're still laying in boxes or where they are. But very exciting. They did. It all did happen like it was supposed to, because we had gotten one word that they were still waiting on doors and different things because of supply chain. But I was on a call and they said, I talked to them this morning and they're getting their keys today. So they are making progress.
Thank you.
And that's our hope, is that, I mean, we say we're moving September 16th. We're still telling people that's a tentative date. If we don't get supply stuff, TFC could change that at any time. We're hoping we're so late that all of that will take care of itself and we'll still move on the 16th. That would be lovely, because that's what we're planning on.
And the other agencies that are earlier than ours have already gotten confirmation. So I think we're in good shape, but right now, stay tuned. But I think we told all of you the 14th of September, if everything goes right, our IT department's moving late that afternoon. And then the 15th and 16th, y'all bear with us, because the 15th we will be functional. We're not sure how functional. And then the 16th we will not be functional. Friday the 16th we will be down. They'll be moving everything on Friday the 16th, and then Saturday the 17th will be a large party at 1801 Congress, and all of you in the audience are invited. Everyone's welcome to come.
You will be schlepping boxes. Wear jeans and tennis shoes.
Bring food and drinks and come and enjoy it. Come and enjoy.
Okay, so I have one question, and then I want to tag team with that. So the one question is, there was a time capsule on there. Does every agency get to put something in the time capsule?
That was from the topping off ceremony. So at the topping off ceremony, they collected business cards from different people and had some speakers, and that's when they put in the time capsule.
Not us, Julie.
I was thinking, man, we could put a law book, and then, when we open it up, we could see, did we shrink it down or not? Kidding. So September 17th, I would encourage everyone to put that on their calendar. I know it's a Saturday, but I think that, staff's they're gonna have movers on Friday to move like big things. But I think it would be good if we could just help staff move boxes so they can unpack and we can help facilitate in any way. So if the 17th is something that would work into your schedule, I'd ask you to kind of put that on there. And then so kind of thinking through a timeline, because I want to make sure everybody kind of, always has that in mind. So our next board meeting for sure will be here in August. Did you want to talk about a little bit about the fact that after August, before September, will need
Yes.
to do?
Yes. The hope is that I have badge applications for you at the August board meeting so that you can go get your badge while you're in Austin. TFC has promised me that we'll have a minimum of 30 days to do that. That matches with the board meeting. I've told them we may need to have some select people do that a little bit earlier. So that's our goal, is for you to go exchange your badge for the new badge. I haven't had details on exactly what that's going to entail. How long are they going to have you keep your badge before you turn it in? For expediency purposes, if they're going to give you a new badge on the spot, we're probably just going to have you turn your old badge into us so that we can turn them in at the same time. As far as parking goes, DPS is also pretty busy right now, so they're still trying to figure out this new building as well. There are a bunch of visitor spaces underneath the building that will be available for y'all. We haven't gotten a lot of information on reserved spaces, how many they are, exactly where they are. So we'll get you that information as soon as possible, but it will be under the building, is the best we know.
The under the building parking is not going to be ready, we've been told, when we move in. The parking in the garage next to us is going to be available, but we're supposed to have 10,000 spots under the building. So we hope that you will have plenty of spots to park under the building.
In November.
I think Julie's further question was as far as November is concerned. In November right now, we have tentative space booked at TDLR across town. We're hoping that the reservation system gets up and live and we can actually be in our building in our room, but we're not sure that our room's going to be ready in November. All of that is to be determined. So state TDLR headquarters, Lily has us a room booked at TDLR that we can use for November if we need to use that. But we'll let you know as soon as we know something. But everybody is anxious about our conference rooms at 1801, and that's exactly where we hope we are on the first Tuesday in November, but if we're not there, we'll be at TDLR.
And just to kind of piggyback a little bit on that, we're going to try and keep scheduling as close as what we have done. But obviously with the move and with the rooms, there may be alterations to the calendar we present in August, but we will try our best to maintain what y'all have become accustomed to, which is the first Tuesday on those months.
Any other questions for Ann? All right, well, great
Thank
job,
you.
Ann, and thank you so much. Super exciting. All right, Ms. Megan, would you like to walk us through the report on appeals from SOA?
I would. First up, we have the Garrett case, and you've heard about this one for the past couple of years. This is the case where the two physicians sued TSVP and TMB regarding the prohibition from physicians dispensing from office practices. There was a favorable ruling from a district court that dismissed the case, but the plaintiffs appealed to the Third Court of Appeals in Austin. An attorney from the Office of the Attorney General's Solicitor General's office has been appointed to handle this case for the court. The briefs were filed in July and August. The court decided not to conduct oral arguments, so the appeal will be decided on the briefs, and there are no new updates on this one since the last court meeting. Next, we have Whole Women's Health. And this is also one that you've heard about at past board meetings. It's regarding Senate Bill 8, which you may have heard referred to in the news as the Fetal Heartbeat Bill. The plaintiffs are Texas abortion providers and individuals and organizations who help patients obtain abortions, and are suing the executive directors of the Texas Medical Board, Texas Board of Nursing, Texas Pharmacy Board, along with the executive commissioner of the Texas Health and Human Services Commission. Attorneys from the Attorney General's Office and the Office of the Solicitor General have been appointed to handle this case. On March 11th, the Supreme Court of Texas delivered an opinion on the certified question from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, asking whether Texas law authorizes certain state officials to directly or indirectly enforce the state's new abortion restriction requirements. The Supreme Court of Texas opinion concluded that it does not. On April 26th, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals remanded the case with instructions to dismiss all challenges to the private enforcement provision of the statute. Next up, we have White Care RX LLC, and this is also one that you've heard about at the last board meeting. The case is in federal district court. This pharmacy had an IC in March 2021 regarding an alleged failure to operate. They chose not to enter into the proposed agreed board order from the IC, and board staff filed and served a notice of hearing at the State Office of Administrative Hearings. The lawsuit alleges that the failure to operate rule is unconstitutional and discriminates against those in heat zone areas. An attorney from the Attorney General's Office has been appointed to handle this case as well, and a motion to dismiss was filed on October 26th. In November, the court denied the motion to dismiss and stayed the case pending the administrative law judge's decision in the SOA case. And so that case is still stayed. Next, we have CDS 8336, and they have appealed the board order that was entered as a result of a hearing that was held at SOA, and then your adoption of a proposed order at the May board meeting. The case is in the 455th District Court in Travis County. An attorney from the Attorney General's Office has been appointed to handle this case on behalf of TSBP, and we're still waiting on a judge to be assigned for that one. And lastly, we have Blue Mint Pharmaco LLC and Jonah Russian. This case is in federal district court. The pharmacy, Blue Mint Pharmaco owns, and Jonah Russian, the PIC, had an IC in March of 2021 regarding alleged non-therapeutic dispensing. They chose not to enter into the proposed agreed board order from the IC, and board staff filed and served notice of hearing at the State Office of Administrative Hearings. The lawsuit alleges that the red flag factors rule is discriminatory and the unlawful administration of disciplinary proceedings. An attorney from the Attorney General's Office has also been appointed to handle this case, and a pre-motion conference is being held today in that one.
Any questions for Megan? All right. I'm gonna go ahead and take us through the next.
That's also me.
I know, that's what I said.
I turned my microphone off. I was so excited. So staff has prepared some suggestions for potential law changes during the 2023 legislative session, or the 88th session. The first of the two is section 565.003. And during the 2019 legislative session, the legislature passed House Bill 2174 and House Bill 3284, both of which amended section 565.0031 of the Pharmacy Act regarding disciplinary ground for non-residence pharmacies. Currently, both versions are in effect and are slightly in conflict. These need to be reconciled. So House Bill 2174 listed specific sections of the Texas Controlled Substances Act as disciplinary grounds, and House Bill 3284 listed all of Subchapter C of the Texas Controlled Substances Act. Subchapter C includes more sections than listed in the House Bill 2174 version. Section 481.003 of the Texas Controlled Substances Act specifies which sections of Chapter 481 are to be administered by the board and which sections are to be administered by the Director of the Department of Public Safety. The sections listed in House Bill 2174 is consistent with the scope of the board's authority in Section 481.003, so we believe House Bill 2174 reflects the legislature's intent on that one. And then secondly, we have Section 568.003, and this is regarding fraud, deceit, or misrepresentation. In Section 568.003A3 of the Pharmacy Act for pharmacy technicians, the language differs from the language in Section 565.00185 for pharmacists, because for techs, the fraud is limited to seeking a registration, and it seems like this language difference may have been an oversight. It seems that section 568.003A3 could be reworded to mirror 565.00185 and say in acting as a pharmacy technician or pharmacy technician trainee, or in seeking a registration to act as a pharmacy technician or pharmacy technician trainee. Those were the ones that were identified by staff.
All right, any questions for Megan on these? All right. So Megan, you wanna take us through F10 and our concern with the non-sterile compounding?
Yes. At the February board meeting, you requested that staff bring back proposed amendments to 291.131 based on compliance's suggestions, and that's what you have in F10. On line 29 is a definition of cleaning, and on line 53 is a definition of sanitizing, and you've seen these definitions before, they haven't changed. On line 96, it expands on the required training for all personnel involved in non-sterile compounding and specifies training areas including hand hygiene, garbing, cleaning and sanitizing, handling and transporting components and compounded sterile preparations, measuring and mixing, proper use of equipment and devices, and documentation of the compounding process. On line 173, it removes language regarding occasional compounding and instead would require all pharmacies engaging in compounding to have a designated and adequate area for compounding. On line 190, it requires that cleaning and sanitizing occur on a regular basis as defined in appropriate standard operating procedures. And just as a note, requirements for standard operating procedures are found in the referred section 8A regarding compounding process. And then starting on line 194 are amendments regarding the balance. These would require a Class A pharmacy who engages in non-sterile compounding that requires weighing a component to have a balance that is properly maintained, inspected, and calibrated every 12 months by a qualified independent individual, and calibrated and accuracy verified by the pharmacy on a routine basis as specified in the pharmacy's SOPs. On line 297, it requires personnel engaged in compounding to perform proper hand hygiene as defined in SOPs. On line 301, it says garbing requirements and the frequency of changing garb shall be determined in the pharmacy's compounding performed. Line 388 adds required documentation for the master worksheet for batch compounding or anticipatory compounding that compliance staff believes was inadvertently deleted at some point. The addition requires a reference to the location of the criteria used to determine the beyond use state and documentation of performance of quality control procedures. For this one, similar requirements are already found on line 365 for compounding pursuant to patient-specific prescription drug or medication orders. And then on line 396 is another place where compliance staff believes language was inadvertently deleted at some point, and it's adding that back in.
All right, so first of all, I want to thank the staff for all their work on this, because I know that you've done a great deal. So at this time, I open the floor for discussion. There's several things that we can do with this. No action, we can propose it to go forward, or we could ask staff to do further work and bring it back again. And I believe that, I'll just reference back to, Debbie's made comments earlier, so if we feel like we need to ask her for clarification or more questions from her statement, we'll do that at this time as well. Yes.
And the discussion is specific to item F10?
F10.
Correct.
Just a reminder, if you do speak.
Thank you.
All right, I open the floor.
Yep, I'm ready to go.
All right.
Just on line 199, I just wanted to clarify what a qualified independent individual would be.
That's a great question. I I think we would have to circle back to compliance to see what their intention was there. It does seem like it could be a little subjective.
Right.
If I could piggyback on that question since you're on that line. The USP doesn't require an external, or doesn't state an external person to do that. So, I don't know if that's correct or not, but I thought when I read that having to have a qualified external independent individual might be something that's not required by USP, but I understand we have our own rules, so.
That doesn't say external.
Doesn't.
No, it
Yeah.
says qualified
Qualified.
independent.
Yeah,
Qualified independent means what?
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's external independent. Independent could be like they don't work for them, or what does that mean? I mean, I would think we don't, the rule where the pharmacy manager or PIC who's responsible for that might be sufficient, but I understand that why it's on here. I just don't see it called out in USP that way. Sorry.
Well, and I go back to line 201 to 203, I think covers the intent of lines 199 through 200.
So you're saying that that does not
I don't
possibly?
think it's necessary unless the staff had something specific. Like you said, circle back to them on what they intended the qualified independent individual to be. Does that make sense?
Yes. I think my best guess on that is the reason for the independent is that it's intended to be somebody outside of the pharmacy, an outside person coming in. But we
See, I
can
didn't know if it
definitely
was
follow
that
up.
or if they, you know, it used to be that the board inspected and calibrated, so I didn't know if it was just saying it was not gonna be somebody from the board.
That's what they indicated to me.
Yeah,
Was
that's
it
what
was
I-
no longer a board representative that would be doing that, it would be someone besides the board. And I'm not sure, I think you may be right, I'm not sure that that's necessary. You know, I think the next language may cover that.
Right.
It's yours, and do you have attorney?
I have an outside company that comes in once a year and does it.
So those are easy to come by.
It was for us. I've heard some horror stories though. I don't think it needs to be an outside contractor personally. I think pharmacists who compound are very capable of calibrating their own scales.
Agreed.
Yes, ma'am, Megan? Oh, you look like you had something you needed to. Yes, sir.
If the staff feels like this line 199 will stay in, is it possible to define the qualified independent individual in the definitions at the top?
That
Like
would be
if they
possible.
intend to keep this in there, and that if the board agrees to keep that in there, can they just define what that is at the top? So
That's
that we would
possible.
know, okay.
They could define that at the top, or they could elaborate, in that line where it is on 199.
That would be my preference. That would be my preference, is that it's direct in line 199, 200. The other aspect of that particular line that I have issue with, and maybe this is just standard, but the at least every 12 months seems somewhat vague. And I'd like to see something that doesn't give that much. It seems odd. That whole line's just odd.
I will remind you that you have the rulemaking authority, so if you don't like lines 199 through 200, as the board, you could choose to not include it in any proposal that you moved forward.
So it could be stricken, or it could.
I agree with Rick and Jenny on the aspect of independent individual potentially being something other than independent, potentially external or even internal, being a little bit more specific to that. But independent is vague in at least every 12 months for whatever reason, and I don't know what an alternative would be to that just yet, although it should be fairly simple, but it just bothers me.
Well, and if you look at, sorry, Megan, I cut you off.
Go for it.
You know, if you look at, if it's internal, then I go with Jenny in the fact that it says, if you look at 201, it already says it has to be calibrated and have accuracy of the balance verified by the pharmacy on a routine basis as specified in the pharmacy's SOPs.
Okay.
I think that covers it.
Yeah,
So,
So Megan, I did cut you off, so I wanted to circle back to you.
Oh, I was just gonna tell Daniel that at least every 12 months is kind of a
Standard.
legalese sort of thing.
Oh, it's what
Because
y'all's
if you
language.
say every 12 months, it's requiring it on a specific day,
Yeah.
and it's a little bit too restrictive,
Got it.
so.
Just one question, because I've been asked this by several people. Is routine basis okay with the board? Or do you want a time frame in there? If you drop the 99, 199 and 200, which I'm not opposed to, 201 says on a routine basis. Is that okay? Are you okay as a board?
That's okay, it just depends on how often you use your scales. You know, you're not gonna, if it's once in a blue moon, you're not going to calibrate them on a daily basis. But if you use them all day long, your computer software's set up to do that.
But does routine basis say to you that should be done at least every 12 months? That's what I'm asking.
To me, routine basis is more frequent than every 12 months.
But you use them all the time.
Yes.
For those that don't use them all the time, I think the language in 199 and 200, that at least every 12 months is there for a reason. I'm asking you, should we change routine basis to at least every 12 months?
Well, it could be inserted.
Right.
On line 20, on line.
I'm just asking, because I've been asked that question.
I agree.
I've been asked that question several times, and that was one of the compliance issues, was when we go in, because otherwise your SLP could say whatever. But if it's in a rule that says at least every 12 months, then you've got to do it at least that often.
Okay,
I would
so,
agree with that.
yeah, so, on a routine basis, in parentheses, at least every 12 months.
So-
As specified.
As specified.
So is that an amendment to item
How
202?
would you word it, Megan, because you don't like that? How would you word it? To get at least every 12 months? To get at least every 12 months in there?
Yeah, I think we, the more rule format of that, we might just take out on a routine basis and say at least every 12 months.
Because then that could be done.
They could do it more.
They could be
it
done
just is a
daily, they could be done
minimum.
weekly, but at least every 12 months we expect it if it's worded that way.
Okay.
Which is what I think we want.
All right, so then I'll propose
Oh,
that we
okay.
eliminate lines 199 and 200, have the staff insert an every 12-month verbiage in line 202.
And? You'd need to strike the routine basis.
No, leave it in there.
Leave it in there? Okay, that's not the way I heard that.
I thought that's what you said.
No.
Okay, strike it. Okay, sorry.
So strike it?
Strike it.
Second.
Oh.
And then, and move to put this on the proposed.
That's what I was waiting for.
So where this is right now, you could either have it proposed out of the discussion item, and you can have it move forward where we put it in the register after this meeting and bring it back for adoption the next time. Or you could have us make these updates, bring it back as, for you to consider proposing in August, and then it would be up for adoption in November.
That would be really clean.
I know, but I sort of want it to be proposed so that it is in the register. I'm concerned with the lack of comments this time around.
That's what, I'm just trying to make sure that we understand what you're motioning. So your motion is to make those changes and have this proposed into the register.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Go ahead and do it.
Okay, well, it's still dependent upon my second, because that's changed a little bit. So how does that change things if it's specific to the registry?
It wouldn't be published in the register without the changes being made.
Okay.
So what she is motioning is that staff make these changes.
Right, I got that
and
part.
then and propose it with these changes. So instead of bringing it back for proposal in August, it would be proposed at this board meeting with these changes, go into the register, have the normal comment period that you see anytime anything's proposed, and then be brought back for adoption with any written comments to be presented at the August board meeting.
Okay, I can live with that. I can live with that. Thank you.
Okay, so I do have a motion.
Motion second.
Do I officially have a second?
do.
All right, so we have a motion by Jenny and a second by Daniel that we will move this forward as proposed with the revisions as stated for the next board meeting. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. All right, I think we've got time for going to take us through F11.
Okay. So as we heard a little bit earlier today, the requirement for in-person counseling under Section 291.33 has been waived since March 20th of 2020. It is currently set to expire on June 30th of 2022, or when the March 13th, 2020 disaster declaration is lifted or expires. And so if you look on this document, on line 183, it shows in green the amendments that were proposed earlier today. And then on line 129, or 229, sorry, it shows the stricken language that has been in effect under the governor's waiver. So if you wanted to continue having what's been allowed under the governor's waiver to continue moving forward, this is what would be stricken.
Discussion?
I think, going back to something I said earlier, I think we've learned a lot during the COVID times of what is safe to do and what helps the process. I agree, line 229, moving the in-person to continue what we've been doing since, you know, still be safe and all the things that are involved. But I think the in-person striking, I think, is a good move, considering where, you know, the reality of how things are done today. I think, and we have not seen, that I can tell, any negative consequences from those that have occurred. And again, the only ambiguity in here is possibly, I think, the delivery of who communicates orally. That's still the same, is what you're saying. The offer out, we have it written here, is only the pharmacist, right? Is that what the?
That's correct. It doesn't change who's allowed to counsel.
Correct. I do, as a point of reference, think that a lot of states allow delegated staff to maybe make that offer or to do with it, you know, to help with that communication, to let the patients know. Pharmacists can always obviously block things to be mandatorily discussed with the patient, but I know in other states they don't have that restriction. I just bring it to the attention. If anybody has any consideration for that, I think it helps a little bit with the delivery of it. You know, like I said, it's maybe just a step forward. You know, I know it's not the scope of what you brought up here, but it's something to consider. The in-person portion, I know they would alter other rules by changing that, you know, complicating it, but that's something maybe to consider. Anybody has any thoughts on that, or just the in-person portion?
I'm just gonna throw in something here
Yeah.
on that. Statute provides that providing patient counseling is the practice of pharmacy and can only be provided by a pharmacist.
Understand.
So that's
It would be
something to keep
it'd
in
be a
mind.
legislative change.
Okay,
We'd have to
all right, that's fine. But I think this is for me, I would think this is a good move to continue on, because, you know, we're eventually gonna get out of COVID times, and I think this is a good option for us.
Megan, will you just answer just on the record so that I don't have this question a lot later? You say that statute requires a pharmacist to do the counseling, which I don't think that's what he requested. His request was the offer, to make the offer. Does statute require the offer to be made by the pharmacist? I know that, and he's not asking for anybody but a pharmacist to do the counseling. I've just had this question lots as I've traveled the state since I've been here. So I want to make sure that what statute says and make sure that we're all on the same page as we move forward.
Since I'm on the record, I'd want to look into that. I don't know off the top of my head.
But you understand what my
exactly.
question is?
Yeah, it was not to delegate the counseling, it was more to say the offer. You know, like I said, I'm licensed in different places, it's not a requirement in other states, and doesn't really impact the quality of the consultation.
All right.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Megan, when this is, when the declaration is over, then we will come back with these changes back to the original. How's that gonna work?
So whenever the declaration expires or is lifted, what's highlighted in yellow there won't be stricken anymore. It'll just automatically go back to the way that it was.
Okay. We're just continuing it until that time.
It's while the governor's waiver is in
Right.
place.
Right,
So
that's
the,
what I'm saying,
yeah.
until that.
So
So
yeah,
this-
until the governor's waiver goes away,
Okay.
that strike is there.
Okay.
And this is just to show you, if you wanted this to continue after the governor's waiver is over, this is what you would do to effectuate that.
Okay.
To make it permanent. It would make
I got
the change permanent.
So the action you're needing right now is a motion to propose?
not quite yet. So I want to just be a devil's advocate for just a second, because I want us to make sure that we're thinking of the citizens of the state of Texas and not just the practice pharmacy, because it's not about the business. It's about making sure we're doing what's right for the state of Texas. So I guess my devil's advocate question, just to think through all the way, is, you know, with this mandate and or the way it is now, I guess my question would be, are we sure that counseling is still occurring? And that would be my question. I know that there are certain systems that are in place that, you know, were modified to allow this to be in place. I know that there are certain people that have that modification that didn't lift it so that it stayed in place. We felt it was necessary, where the pharmacist has to either use their biometrics or document that it occurred at the time. So, you know, I want to make sure that just to ask that question so we think it through. It's a last check, so I think it's an important measure.
You remember on some of our former conferences, we had misfills, and the pharmacist did not catch the issue. They didn't open the bottle or they didn't open the sack or whatever. And that's where this happens. That's where this final check is. So this, you know, it's pretty frightening if there's no check at the end. You know, today, counseling is pretty important. I work in the cancer chemo side, and we counsel all the time.
Yeah, and to be clear, it doesn't do away with counseling. It just says it doesn't have to be done in person. So.
Yeah, I think I agree. Consultation needs to happen. It needs to be done well, and that's really not what this is saying. It's just saying where it's delivered. But you're right. The final check is important, and whether it's in person or not, it gets to be bypassed by somebody. But I think it's important that we just give some more flexibility to the practice so that it does help patients maneuver a little bit easier in times. So I don't think that we're talking about removal of counsel at all. It's
Yeah,
really
no,
actually-
that's not
that's
part
really
of
not
it.
the issue, but you're right. We need to make sure, and people have to document on their record that it was completed. And it's the responsibility of that pharmacist to document they did it.
So, and again, we didn't do it, and I'll throw this back out there. So if it's a phone call, are there rules in place that you have to try X number of times, and if you don't reach them, or I don't know. I mean, I just want to make sure that we've really.
But what occurred during this time? Was there any issues that occurred with phone calls or that caused a problem? I don't know. I'm just asking that out there. Because every circumstance could have unintended consequences,
Right.
what you're saying. But I just want to be reasonable with it, that, you know, we hadn't really seen a lot of that, what you're saying. But you're right, you know, there could be a circumstance where people just say, oh, I tried and no one answered. You know, maybe that'd be good enough, you know.
Hey, Rick, in your work and in Julie's, when you check out a patient, when a patient's checked out, is there a prompt on that when it's checked out? Do you have a question for the pharmacist, or how does that in y'all's companies? Does that prompt the
The offer
clerk?
has to be made by the pharmacist. They walk over. The text don't ask that.
No, but the clerk, when they're checking them out,
They don't.
there's not a prompt anywhere.
It blocks it from going out without
Yeah.
documentation that the pharmacist
Okay.
walked over. Yes.
So back to your question then. Do we need a motion? And the answer is we don't, or we do, depending upon what we want to occur. So we could do nothing at this point. We could postpone until we, or we could propose it forward. So there's really like three things we can do.
Well, Julie, my concern would be that something is removed between the next board meeting or something, and, this will be in limbo for a little bit. So, I mean, my suggestion, I would make a motion to propose with these changes in place.
All right, so we have a proposal, and we have a second.